Adventure is just a romantic name for trouble. It sounds swell when you write about it, but it's hell when you meet it face to face in a dark and lonely place. You know, a lot of times we talk about an adventure and how much quote unquote fun an adventure is. But, you know, if you're watching a movie or reading a book, you don't really think about what a terrible time the person is having who's having the adventure. But if you have the right mindset, you know, it can be enjoyable. This is what I learned over the years. One of the things that I discovered about myself was that no matter what I was going through at the time, as long as I felt okay about myself, it seemed like I could deal with whatever came at me. I could just view it as an adventure, and I could deal with whatever it was as it happened. However, I noticed that when my pride got involved, everything changed. Now, suddenly, I couldn't just deal with the challenges. Now I had to deal with the ego and all of the problems that go along with that. Instead of viewing my situation with the detachment needed to accomplish the mission, now all of a sudden I have all this emotional baggage I have to deal with. For my family, in our ministry, the thing that was the hardest to deal with was this feeling that we were failures. We stepped out in faith. We were believing that God would provide for us. And yet, if you looked at us, we just looked like any other poverty class family. You hear Christians say these trite sayings like, God will never let you down, or you can't outgive God. Those things became like swords in our side. We gave thousands of dollars to ministry. We gave away our house, we gave away our car, we tithed on our income, and yet we were still having trouble with buying groceries. We still got sick while we were believing for healing. We still had no car. No one cared what we had to say, and why should they? The world said about our situation, of course, what did you expect? The believers, they said, well, you just didn't give enough, or you didn't give the right way, or you didn't give to the right person, or your confession was bad, or you just didn't believe hard enough. To the world, and to some of you, we looked like fools, and we knew it. It's bad enough to be thought a fool by the world, but to be thought a fool by your so-called family of believers, that's even worse. Both sides thought we were crazy. Some of you still do. That's all right. It's hard enough going through all of that as an adventure, but having the added pressure of your pride constantly being attacked, it makes everything far, far worse. The only cure for this, if you get into this situation, is for you to kill that pride demon with extreme prejudice. The only way to do that I know of, is to identify everything that looks like pride and sweep it out of your house. You have to recognize that it is filthy. It is self-righteousness. In Luke chapter 18, Jesus tells a story about two men who went up to the temple to pray. The first one was a Pharisee. The other one was a tax collector. And you know this story probably. Jesus says that the tax collector, because he was humble, he went home forgiven. The Pharisee, however, since he thought he was all that in a bag of chips, he still carried his own self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is a little bit like making your own monopoly money and then trying to spend it at the store. You let me know how that works out if you try it. Pride is fed by receiving value from something other than God. The fact that you have a skill set does not make you any better than anyone else. It just makes you who you are. The fact that you have things doesn't make you any better, and it doesn't give you value as a person. It's just another skill set to be utilized when God tells you to. As you're going through your next adventure, take a moment to step back and recognize how the enemy is trying to get you distracted by the pride. If he can get you focused on your pride, you will start attacking the red cape like a bull does in the ring. If that happens, you're at his mercy. And it's just a matter of time until you are truly humiliated with a sword stuck in your neck. Proverbs 16:18 says, "Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." This was a difficult lesson to learn. And of course, you have to learn it, relearn it over and over sometimes. The devil always comes along. And if you try to do something good, let's say, for instance, you decide you want to pray for half an hour every morning. You do that, and the devil's going to come along, and he's going to say, well, that's good. That's good. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. But Julie, she prays 45 minutes every day. It's too bad you're not as good as Julie. Or maybe you give $5 in the offering plate, and the devil will come along and say, well, yeah, that's great. That's fine. I'm glad you did that. But John over there, did you see he just put a $20 bill in the plate? It's too bad you can't be as good as John. And that's just how he works. And anytime you're going through something, you're going to have this come up. I used to work as a maintenance man in an apartment complex, and I really liked the job. I really liked the work. I was doing heating and cooling and taking care of the water and the plumbing and the grass and all of that stuff. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. I took care of the swimming pool. I mowed the grass. But then people, like your family or whoever, will say things like, oh, you're just a maintenance man. Or, oh, well, if you really were smart, maybe you'd be doing something better than just being a maintenance man. And it was hard sometimes to do that job because my pride was involved. All of a sudden, I couldn't just be proud that I cut the grass or feel good about myself because I cut the grass. I had to think about, well, yeah, but if I was as good as my brother-in-law, maybe I'd be doing this or that or the other thing. Maybe I'd be a brain surgeon or a doctor or something. We've got to understand that it doesn't matter what job you have. In the olden days, they used to talk about ditch diggers. And I don't think they do that very much anymore. Of course, now they operate a backhoe. But, when people were getting paid $1 a day to dig a hole, that was sort of thought of as, the lowest of the low. Those guys weren't very skilled. All they could do was dig a hole. But you know what? If you ever hung around with somebody who did that as a job, they could dig a hole faster and better than anybody else because they knew what they were doing. And it takes certain skills to do every different kind of job. And a ditch digger who does it quite often gets pretty good at it. You can learn a lot from a ditch digger and from anybody else. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're waiting tables or, it doesn't matter. I mean, an actor, a politician, a CEO, it doesn't matter. You have skills that you've learned that the people you hang around with have taught you these skills. You've practiced, you've learned, you've gone through the education, you've done whatever you have to do. And here, this brings up another subject that I want to deal with before I get done. There's this thing about imposter syndrome. And you need to know that everyone has that. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're George Soros or if you're the President of the United States. Well, we won't talk about that. But anyway, it doesn't matter who you are. There are going to be days when you're going to have this anxiety that everybody around you is going to figure out that you're just making it up as you go along. Everybody does that. Everybody has to do that because you can't know how to do everything all the time. And so every time you see a safety manual that says don't do this, well, the reason they wrote that in there is because somebody did it. So you got to be able to be at rest with who you are and recognize that you're doing your best, and anything where you're concerned or worried about your value as a person based on what you do, that's just pride. Your identity needs to be in God, in Christ, in who you are as a born-again person, and recognize that that's what gives you value as a person. All right, so I didn't mean to go on so long. I will see you guys next week. Next week, we're going to talk about how to know if you're in the will of God. That's a good chapter. Of course, it really goes well with this chapter. So I will see you next week. Bye-bye.